Hello everybody, Yom Tov. I hope everybody's doing well today, or as best as they can during this current situation that we're having to find ourselves in. So this is one of the things I'm trying to do to help, is by giving us something else to focus on, something else to think about. So as you know, we are alternating Wednesdays between folk tales and fables and real crime cases. This week it's the turn of the real crime case, and today I'm looking into the story behind Bible John. Who was Bible John? What did he do? And linking it to that of a man called Peter Tobin. They were both serial killers, and the reason why I'm linking Bible John, well, allegedly, for entertainment purposes only, that I'm linking him to Peter Tobin is the fact that this is what the police have done. They're linking the two together, even though they're about 99% certain that they are one and the same person. But to this day, it's all supposition and summation. And they're looking at modus operandi, between the two cases. Now, one happened in the late 1960s, and the others happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I'm going to start off by telling you what I've learned about Bible John and what it was that he did. Now, I've got to give you a warning here that these obviously are murders. They are particularly unpleasant. I'm giving you a warning now. At viewers' discretion, if I need to go in and talk about the case as thoroughly as I can and as sensitively as I can. But this is for adults only. This is true crime. So I've advised you that it's not particularly pleasant. So viewing is at your own discretion and at your own risk. So without further ado, I'm now going to start telling you about what happened in the late 1960s in Scotland. Bible John is the nickname of a serial killer who is believed to have murdered 3 young women after meeting them at the Barrowland Ballroom in Glasgow, Scotland, between 1968 and 1969. As of 2014, the killer has never been identified, although the known movements and modus operandi of convicted Glaswegian serial killer Peter Tobin suggest that he may have been behind these killings. However, this has never been proven, and the case remains unsolved. On the 23rd of February 1968, the naked body of 25-year-old nurse Patricia Docker was found by a man on his way to work in a lane behind Carmichael Place in Glasgow. The lane was only yards from her home in Langside Place. She had been raped and strangled. The previous night, she had told her parents that she was going out dancing at a nearby club. But in fact, she went to the Barrowland Ballroom for the over 25s night. It transpired that at some point during the night, Patricia Docker left the Majestic and ended up at the Barrowlands, where it's thought that is where she met a killer. So the first place she went to was the Majestic Club, and then she went on and moved to the Barrowlands Or she hadn't told her parents about that. So, unfortunately, that was to come out later, much to their dismay. Focusing their investigation on the Majestic cost the police valuable time. Pat's handbag and clothes were missing, and despite months of investigation, neither were ever found. On Friday, the 15th of August 1969, mother of three Jemima MacDonald, 32, also went for a night out at the Barrowland Ballroom. The next day, Jemima's sister Margaret heard rumours in the area that young children were seen leaving an abandoned old building, and they were talking about the body. So Margaret was so concerned that she herself, fearing the worst, went to the old building, where she found Jemima's battered body. She had been strangled, raped, and beaten to death. Unlike Patricia Docker, Jemima was fully clothed when her body was found. Witnesses said that they saw her leaving the club at midnight with a tall, slim young man with red hair. Police conducted door-to-door inquiries at the time and found a woman who remembered hearing screams coming from the same building in McKeith Street where Jemima's body was found. Although she couldn't vouch for the exact time that she heard these screams. Police considered the information of little use, and the investigation was later wound down. And on the 31st of October 1969, 29-year-old Helen Puttock was found murdered in Earl Street in Scotstoun. She had also been to the Barrowland Ballroom on the night she was murdered. She had gone from there with her sister Jean and had met two men, one of them they were actually both called John. One said he was from Castle Milk, while the other didn't disclose where he was from. So we'll have one called Castle Milk John and then just John, so you'll know the difference between the two. After being in their company for well over an hour, the two girls, they left to head home. Castle Milk John walked to George Square to get a bus, while Helen, Jean and the killer hailed a taxi. They set off from Glasgow Cross and made a westward journey heading to Knightswood where Jean lived. It was during this journey that the most crucial information about the killer became apparent. More significant were the conversations in the taxi that would later be used to create a psychological profile of the killer. Jean told detectives that he was a well-spoken man who quoted from the Bible. It was this information that led the killer being given the moniker Bible John, and it was given to him by the media. Jean told detectives more about what they talked about, and then after dropping Jean at Knightswood, the taxi then continued to Earl Street in Scotstoun, where Helen lived. The next morning, Helen's battered body was found in the back garden of her flat in Earl Street. She'd been raped and strangled. The contents of her handbag had been scattered nearby, but the actual bag itself was missing. It's been suggested that the killer took the bag as a trophy. Grass stains on Helen's feet indicated there'd been a struggle in which Helen probably tried to escape her killer. She also had a deep bite mark on her leg. The suspect was described by Helen's sister Jean as being a well-dressed young man, tall, slim, with reddish fair hair, and described as being polite, well-dressed and well-spoken. She said the stranger had given his name as John Templeton or Sempleston, and that he had frequently quoted from the Bible during the taxi ride home. He was reported to have said, "I don't drink at Hogmanay, I pray," and he referred to Moses and his father's belief that dance halls were the dens of iniquity. He was aged between 25 and 30 and approximately 5 foot 10 inches in height. Although Helen's sister Jean said that the man was slim and tall with reddish fair hair, the bouncers at the Barrowland Ballroom dismissed this description and said that the man Helen had left with was short, well-spoken, and had jet black hair. Police at the time considered this to be a more reliable description, as Jean was drunk that night, and they'd already discovered the killer hadn't been quoting directly from the Bible, but had been referring to it. The last possible sighting of the man was of a well-dressed young man in a dishevelled state with possible scratch marks on his face, getting off a bus at Grey Street at Sauchiehall Street around 1:30 a.m. He was last seen heading towards the public ferry to cross the River Clyde to the south side of the city. Each murder had common similarities, which gave the police no doubts that the victims were the work of the same man. They all had met their killer at the Barrowland Ballroom. Their handbags were missing. They were all strangled with their own stockings and raped. All three were escorted home by the killer and murdered within feet of their doorstep. All of them had been menstruating at the time, and all three had sanitary protection placed on or near the bodies. So that's where the story of Bible John ends. He's killed 3 women who he met at the Barrowland Ballroom between 1968 and 1969. After the murder of Helen, that's it. It goes very quiet and there's nothing more heard of him. Until Peter Tobin sort of rises to the surface. So I'm now going to tell you what I found out about him. And then I'll tell you why they're linked. His name is Peter Britton Tobin. He was actually already a convicted rapist. He killed 3 women. The date of the murders were between the 10th of February and August the 5th, 1991. And then the last murder was September the 24th, 2006. He was born in 1946, August the 27th. He's killed in England and in Scotland, and he was sentenced to life in prison on May the 4th, 2007. Right. He's a convicted Scottish serial killer and sex offender, now serving a sentence of life imprisonment for 3 murders. Prior to his first murder conviction, Tobin served 10 years in prison for a double rape committed in 1993, following which he was released in 2004. In 2007, he was sentenced to life with a minimum of 21 years for the rape and murder of Angelica Cluck in Glasgow in 2006. Skeletal remains of 2 further young women who went missing in 1991 were subsequently found at his former home in Margate. Tobin was convicted of the murder of Vicky Hamilton in December 2008, when his minimum sentence was increased to 30 years, and of the murder of Dinah McNichol in December 2009. He was born in Johnston in Renfrewshire, the youngest of 7 children. He was a difficult child, and in 1953, aged 7, he was sent to an approved school. He later spent time in a young offender institution, and in 1970 was convicted and served jail terms in England for burglary and forgery. In 1969, Tobin moved to Brighton, Sussex, with his 17-year-old girlfriend, Margaret Mountney, whom he married in August of that year. They split after a year and she divorced him in 1971. In 1973, in Brighton, he married a local nurse, 30-year-old Sylvia Jeffries. They had a son and a daughter, the latter of whom died soon after birth. This second violent marriage lasted until 1976, when she left with their son. Tobin then had a relationship with Cathy Wilson, who gave birth to a son in December 1987. Tobin married her in Brighton in 1989, when she was 17. In 1990, they moved to Bathgate, West Lothian. Wilson left Tobin in 1990 and moved back to Portsmouth in Hampshire, where she had grown up. All three later gave similar accounts of falling for a charming, well-dressed Tobin who turned violent and sadistic during their marriages. In May 1991, Tobin moved to Margate in Kent in the United Kingdom, and in 1993 to Havant, Hampshire, to be near his youngest son. Now, in 1993, Tobin attacked two 14-year-old girls babysitting his son at his flat in Havant, Hampshire. After holding them at knife point and forcing them to drink strong cider and vodka, he then sexually assaulted and raped them. To avoid arrest, Tobin went on the run and hid in a religious retreat in Warwickshire under a false name, but he was recognised and arrested after appearing on the BBC Crime Watch programme. On the 18th of May 1994, at Winchester Crown Court, Tobin pleaded guilty and received a 14-year prison sentence. He was released in 2004 and moved to Paisley in Renfrewshire in Scotland. In May 2007, he received a 30-month sentence for breaching the terms of the Violent and Sex Offender Register from the case. In September 2006, Peter Tobin was working as a church handyman at St Patrick's Roman Catholic Church, Anderston, in Glasgow. He'd assumed the name Pat McLaughlin to avoid detection, as he was still on the Violent and Sex Offender Register, but he wasn't compliant with it, following his 1994 convictions for rape and assault. Angelika Kluk was a 23-year-old student from Glasgow, near Krakow in Poland. She was staying at the chapel house of St Patrick's Church, where she worked as a cleaner to help finance a Scandinavian studies course at Gdansk University. She was last seen alive in the company of Peter Tobin on the 24th of September 2006, and is thought to have been attacked by him in the garage attached to St Patrick's Chapel House. She was beaten, raped and stabbed to death. Then her body was concealed in an underground chamber beneath the floor near the confessional in the church. Forensic evidence suggested that she was still alive when she was placed under the floorboards. Police found her body on the 29th of September, and Tobin was arrested in London shortly afterwards. He had been admitted to hospital under a false name and with a fictitious complaint. The 6 weeks trial resulted from the evidence gathered under the supervision of Detective Superintendent David Remus of Strathclyde Police and took place at the High Court of Justiciary, Edinburgh, between the 23rd of March and the 4th of May 2007. The trial judge was Lord Menzies. The prosecution was led by the Advocate Deputy Dorothy Bain, and the defence was Donald Finlay QC. Tobin denied raping and murdering Miss Kluk and claimed she had consented to have sex with him. Tobin was found guilty of raping and murdering Angelica Klug and was sentenced to life imprisonment to serve a minimum of 21 years. In sentencing Tobin, Judge Lord Menzies described him as an evil man. Well, in June 2007, Tobin's former home in Bathgate, West Lothian in Scotland, was searched by police in connection with the disappearance of a 15-year-old girl called Vicky Hamilton, who was last seen on the 10th of February 1991 as she waited for a bus home to Reading, near Falkirk, also in Scotland. She had been visiting her older sister, Sharon, in Livingston, West Lothian, and was waiting to change buses in Bathgate. The last sighting of her was as she was eating chips on a bench in the town centre. Tobin is believed to have left the town a few days after her disappearance. And on the 21st of July 2007, Lothian and Borders Police released a statement that they had arrested, cautioned and charged a male in connection with the matter, but didn't immediately confirm the identity of the man that was arrested. The investigation later led to a forensic search of a house in Southsea, Hampshire, in early October 2007, where Tobin is believed to have lived shortly after leaving Bathgate. On the 14th of November 2007, Lothian and Borders Police confirmed that human remains were found in the back garden of 50 Irvine Drive, a house in Margate in Kent, once occupied by Tobin, and those remains were those of Vicky Hamilton. After a month-long trial, Tobin was convicted of Hamilton's murder on the 2nd of December 2008 at the High Court in Dundee, in Scotland. Tobin was again defended by Donald Finlay QC, and the prosecution was led by the Solicitor General for Scotland, Frank Mulholland QC. The prosecution case went beyond the circumstance of Tobin having lived at the two houses in Bathgate and Margate in 1991, and consisted of eyewitness testimony of suspicious behaviour by Tobin at the Bathgate house, evidence to destroy his alibi, and forensic evidence of DNA and fingerprints left on a dagger found in the Bathgate house, on Hamilton's purse, and on the sheeting in which her body had been wrapped. When sentencing Tobin to life imprisonment, the judge, Lord Elmsley, said, "You stand convicted of the truly evil abduction and murder of a vulnerable young girl in 1991, and thereafter of attempting to defeat the ends of justice in various ways over an extended period. Yet again you have shown yourself to be unfit to live in decent society. It is hard for me to convey the loathing and revulsion that ordinary people will feel for what you have done. I fix the minimum period which you must spend in custody at 30 years. Yeah, you don't like it either, do you, Kat? Had it been open to me, I would have made that period run consecutive to the 21-year custodial period that you are already serving." On the 11th of December 2008, Tobin gave formal notice to court officials that he intended to challenge the guilty verdict and overturn the prison sentence imposed on him. Tobin's defence team was not required to describe the grounds for this appeal until a later date in the appeals process. Tobin did not proceed with his appeal, however, and it was dropped in March of 2009. Well, Dinah McNichol from Tillingham in Essex was last seen alive on the 5th of August 1991. She was hitchhiking home with a male companion from a music festival in Liphook, Hampshire. He was dropped off at Junction 8 of the M25 near Reigate, and she stayed in the car with the driver. She was never seen again. After her disappearance, regular withdrawals of £250 were made from her Building Society account, at cash points in the UK's south coast counties of Hampshire and Sussex. On the 16th of November 2007, a second body was found at 50 Irvine Drive in Margate. This was later confirmed by police to be that of Dinah McNichol. On the 1st of September 2008, the Crown Prosecution Service served a summons on Tobin's solicitors, formally accusing him of McNichol's murder, and this trial began in June of 2009. The trial was postponed and the jury discharged in July 2009, the judge ruling that Tobin was not fit to stand trial because it was pending surgery. The case resumed on the 14th of December 2009 at Chelmsford Crown Court, and on the 16th of December 2009, after the defence had offered no evidence, a jury found Tobin guilty of McNichol's murder after deliberating for less than 15 minutes. 15 minutes. That's how sure they were of his guilt. Tobin was subsequently received his third life sentence, with a recommendation by the judge that his life sentence should mean life. Police are now reopening Operation Anagram to trace Tobin's past movements and his possible involvement in a further 13 unsolved murders, which includes the 3 Bible John victims. Tobin is reported to have boasted and claimed, while in prison, that he has murdered 48 women. Now, obviously, the conviction of Tobin has led to speculation that he is Bible John. There are similarities between the photographs of Tobin from that era and the photographist artist's impression of Bible John. And Tobin had moved from Glasgow in 1969, the same year as the killings officially ended. It's alleged that Tobin is driven to violence by the menstrual cycle, something which has long been suspected as the motive behind the Bible John murders. Additionally, Tobin was a Roman Catholic with strong religious views. Police haven't commented upon any similarities, but they have said that any surviving forensic evidence will be rechecked. Although DNA had been used to rule out a previous suspect, detectives believe that a DNA link to Tobin is unlikely due to a deterioration of the samples because of poor storage. So unfortunately, because those murders were committed in the late 1960s, they were so poorly stored that no proper DNA could be salvaged. So it would definitively link Peter Tobin to being Bible John. But I'm going to put the duck theory to this, because if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, then it's a duck. And I personally believe that Peter Tobin and Bible John are one and the same. Now, there are murderers who glory in what they've done. And Peter Tobin, he's still alive in prison. He's in a Category A prison, which is for someone who will never be released. Highly dangerous, too dangerous to be out in society. And we do have a vague idea, his motive behind doing what he's done. He's obviously, I don't know what is psychopath, sociopath, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I know a dangerous man when I hear of one. And he is definitely a very, very dangerous man. And I hate to think that there is truth to the fact that he said he's killed 48 women. Only he knows the truth. And that's between him and his maker. So, this is the end of your true crime for this week. Please let me know in the comments, what do you think? Do you think Bible John and Peter Tobin are one and the same person? Or do you think he's a copycat killer? Because there are plenty of those around, that's for sure. It just seems too much of a coincidence to me that he leaves Scotland in 1969 and comes down to England. And after that, there's no more similar murders taking place in Scotland. But they're happening now down in England. Seems too much of a coincidence, that, to me. But things do happen. And it is entirely possible that he's a copycat killer. But I don't know. I'm going with my gut instinct on this one. My personal opinion as I end this video is that I do believe that they are one and the same. And I'm very, very conflicted when it comes to the death penalty. Because if someone takes a life, then taking their life in exchange. Two wrongs don't make a right. But on the flip side, why should they be allowed to draw breath when they've taken the breath from someone else, an innocent person? It's something we should maybe discuss. Is it too barbaric? Is the death penalty the sign of a barbaric society? I was supposed to rise above that. I was supposed to hope that they will be rehabilitated. And of course, people have gone to their deaths in the past, and later it's been proven that they were innocent all the time. It's a very, very touchy subject. Anyway, my friends, I do hope that you've enjoyed this week's true crime, and I will bring you another case in 2 weeks' time. If there are any particular crimes that you want me to look into, they don't have to be murders. We can look at burglaries. We can look at, great train robbery. We can look at gold heists. Anything you like. They don't have to be murders. Let me know the sort of crime that you would like me to find out about for you and read to you. And, I'll do that. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you very, very much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me while I told you this about this horrible, horrible man. As much as I hate the people who've done these things, I've got this, I think it's this sort of morbid fascination for why people do what they do, Sometimes it's just, it was like I was talking about the other day, it's senseless. But it only makes sense to them, the perpetrator, But there we go. Anyway, I love you all. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And I will see you again very, very soon. Bye for now, guys.